Yes, I believe it was Denis who introduced the concept of triple crown, this term triple crown several years ago, and people using this like common term these days. And now Denis wants to show us how to actually use this triple crown of three standards: CMMN, BPMN, and DMN, you know, case management, business process management, and decision management standards all together. And he got probably lucky to have it in real life project, and he will share his experience. Denis?
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Let me first introduce myself. If I can move to the next slide. Okay. So first about myself, it's more or less the same as last year. So the people who have seen my presentation last year still might know me. So I've studied in the Netherlands, information science at Radboud University in Nijmegen, where focus is being laid on decision management already. So that's how I got into the world of decision management. And in the last few years, I have specialized myself in what we call within our organization model-driven engineering. So that's what we call the application of the Triple Crown. But I will move into more detail on that later. So, and then, yeah, this is my second presentation of DecisionCAMP. So, yeah. Thank you for joining this presentation, and also it's the second presentation that is the last one of the DecisionCAMP 3 days. So yeah, the people who are still here, thank you for being there. Then a little introduction of the organization I'm working for. So that's Prodigo. As you may remember, last year I introduced the business analysts, and what we have done is we have made a larger organization called Prodigo, which contains now 3 organizations. The business analyst is one of them, all having a different focus. But the overall focus of Prodigo is to support business departments end-to-end. So that means starting with strategy and going on to the functional analysis. And the technical aspects we don't really take into account when it comes to hard coding. So when we talk about model-driven engineering or the application of the Triple Crown, that is what we do take into account. So, and last, we are product independent. So that means that we support a lot of different products, and we apply the products that the end user wants us to use. So a brief introduction to the Triple Crown. And what you see here is that I don't actually name these standards. So I say decision management and not DMN, decision modeling and notation, and business process management and not business process modeling and notation. Because what you see in real life is that a lot of platforms provide their own interpretation of these standards. So for example, business process management is being implemented by a lot of software vendors in a different way. And we don't want to limit the Triple Crown to the standards, but yeah, there are actually different implementations of those. So that's what we take into account. So yeah, decision management, I don't have to explain. That has been explained already for 3 days. So then business process management concerns the definition of processes that can be completely predefined. So that means that before you actually start executing the process, you exactly know which steps have to be executed. And then case management is more flexible in the sense that there the end user has the possibility to define themselves which are the next tasks to execute. And in some of those projects, you can applicate all 3 of the techniques, and in other projects only some of them. And then there are 2 hot topics nowadays which are closely related to this Triple Crown, which are artificial intelligence, on which Jan did a very interesting topic yesterday, sorry. And then, so I'm not going into that much further either. And then robotic process automation relates then to business process management, where business process management takes into account processes that require manual interaction. Robotic process automation concerns fully automated processes. And what you see there is that in most cases, you don't have fully automated processes. You have a lot of situations where an actor actually has to provide some information or do some manual action. So there it's important that when you apply robotic process automation, that you take into account those manual actions, and that applying business process management as a whole might be interesting for you, so that your robotic processes are then integrated in your high-level business processes. So that's the domain of the Triple Crown. Then why apply the Triple Crown? There are different challenges that modern organizations have. And we have split those challenges up into three main concerns, being first the big influence of IT. So what we see is that IT steers the priorities in a lot of organizations, whereas normally you would expect that the business does so. But based on the amount of work that IT has and the complexity of things, we see that they have a lot of influence when it comes to the priorities setting. Then you see that IT blocks a lot of complexity. So when you propose something as a functional analyst, you hear a lot that things are too complex to be developed. And what you have analyzed is what the business wants, what the business has to execute for their daily work. So they are not in a position to actually block this complexity. But what you see is that business adapts themselves a lot to that. And then business logic is a black box. So when it's developed in a hard-coded implementation, then the business doesn't know what is being developed actually. And even IT on a longer term doesn't know what has been developed. When you look at the old software that is still available, where nobody in the organization actually knows what is being executed in there. Then the second main concern is the low reaction speed. So what we have is a very fast evolving environment. The world around us evolves very quickly. Then there is an increasing automation demand. So when you look at organizations, the business knows that things can be automated and they will ask for it. So you see that there is an increasing demand there. And IT has its own challenges, by which we mean that IT, for example, in a lot of organizations, you see that there are technical re-engineering phases in action to adapt the infrastructure of the infrastructure of IT, and that brings along a lot of new challenges. Think about cloud, things like that, that IT has to spend time on, but doesn't necessarily have time for in combination with the higher demand of the business. And then the third main concern is shadow IT. So what we see there is that there is an increasing amount of product offerings, where in the past you had only the macros for Excel, more or less. You nowadays have flows for Microsoft, things like that, which are almost available in any organization, and the business starts to use that, whereas IT can't follow with the demand they have. So then that results in a fragmented IT landscape, the shadow IT. So you have the products developed by your IT department, but on the other hand, you have the products that are developed by the business themselves, which are not really supported because IT in most cases doesn't even know that those applications exist. And when the person who has developed such a shadow IT application is leaving the organization, then nobody knows what can be done in the future with that program. So those are three main problems that we see in organizations for which model-driven engineering, as we call it, or the Triple Crown, provides a solution. Then I will discuss today a specific case where we have applied the Triple Crown as a whole. So case management, business process management, and decision management. And the customer for which we did that case wanted to be anonymous, but we were allowed to provide the case as an anonymized example. So the case concerns software reselling. So the customer is a vendor of a broad range of products delivered by multiple software vendors or software developers, software houses. And the problems they had was that at that moment, nothing was really automated. So that means that offers were defined in Word. And that meant that there was a lot of manual work, of course. Besides that, the process was also very error prone. And that didn't only relate to the manual work, but also, for example, linking an offer to an actual bill of work didn't always go very well, especially with governmental organizations where the bill of work will not be a signed offer that you have sent, but they will provide their own bill of work. So yeah, that was very error prone, the connection between that. Also, the computation of prices was sometimes error prone. So yeah, the process as a whole could be defined as very error prone. And then there were difficulties in follow-up. So everything went via email. There was no general system that followed all those different offers up. So that means that sometimes when someone went on vacation, there was no follow-up of a specific offer, and then it could take 3-4 weeks before they actually took contact with the customer, things like that. So what we did was we started with a case model as the highest level, and that case model defines two main stages. The first is the case creation, and there we made a distinction between a new opportunity and a case that had to be defined for existing contracts. So of course, all existing contracts they wanted to have in the platform at the end. But yeah, there was nothing in digital form, or yeah, it was in digital form in emails and things like that, but nothing directly accessible like a database or something. So there was no possibility to do a migration or something. So we made a specific task for that. And then yeah, create a new opportunity means that you create a case for new opportunities for new customers. Then once the creation of a case has been executed, you enter in the stage of registered customers. And there you have a few different tasks that can be executed. And I did leave out the small icons that can be added at the bottom of each task. So repetition and whether a task is obligatory or not, just to simplify this model. But what you see is that you have 5 different tasks when you have a registered customer, and those tasks are create a new offer, modify the contact information of a company, add a contract. So the contract means that the signed contracts, those are, and then add licenses are the licenses that are bought from the company who actually sells the product, and then those are linked to the customer as well. For some licenses, for example, you need to provide the licenses for a prolongation. So in that case, yeah, you need to know which licenses have been delivered to a certain customer. And then remove customer. So what you see is that some of those tasks are business processes, which is indicated by a little arrow at the left top, and other are manual tasks. which are indicated by a little human at the left top. And the difference is that a human task is in fact a singular task. So one screen that is being filled in and then that task is being completed. Whereas the business processes are multiple tasks following each other. For the add contract, for example, you would say, yeah, you just add a file to your system and maybe some information, and then that activity is performed. But what we have done is underneath the add contract and the add licenses both, there is an indication for prolongations. So when 1 month before the contract ends, a user is being informed by the process that is behind this task and is then able to create a new offer, which includes exactly the same information as was in the original contract. So that's why those two add contract and add licenses are business processes. Then one of the business processes, so the business process that you will be seeing now is the create new offer, which is at the top left in the registered customer stage. And the create offer consists of different steps, which are select the products, then compute product prices. So what is done there is that since DMN doesn't support multiplicity yet, we loop through that business step for as many products as have been selected by the user in the first step of the process. Then once all the prices of the selected products have been computed, we computed the totals without tax, including tax, etc. Then the fourth step is the possibility for the end user to adapt the prices. So for example, if there is a special agreement with a customer or things like that, they are able to manually adapt the prices. And then once they are done with that, an offer is being generated in PDF. Oh, sorry. And the offer is then being sent to the customer. So the email address is registered of the customer and the email is then being sent to the customer. And then you see one of the DRDs. So what you see here, let me take you one step back, is the compute product prices. So that means that you compute the product price for one single product. And what is done here is you have the list prices and the reduction percentages. The list prices are based on the product that is being selected. The reduction percentages are based on the product and the customer loyalty expressed in years. Sorry. And based on that, the product price is being computed. So that's the total of the number of that type of products that is being requested by the customer. So what you see at the right here is the computation of the reduction percentage. So for product 1 and 2, if the customer loyalty in years is smaller or equal than 2, then the percentage is 5%, etc. for the rest of the table. So I don't have to explain this in further depth. And what is possible as well is that since it's a case, you can execute multiple of those offer processes. So that means that you can generate multiple offers for different products, different types of products at different moments, whenever there is a request from that customer. So now I will walk you through some of the screens that are being generated based on those models within Camunda. That's the tool that we have used as requested by the customer. This doesn't mean that this is a real demonstration of what Camunda offers or can provide, but it's more an indication of what of how those models can be executed and will be executed by most of the different products that are available within those domains. So yeah, of course, you have to be able to create a new case. So that's where we start off. And then screens are being generated based on the variables that have been defined within the model. So within each task, you can define the different variables that have to be requested from the user, and then screens can be generated, which is also available in most of the products. And what you see here is that a create new opportunity task is being started within the case that has been created. And then at the right, you see the screen that is being generated based on the variables that are being requested. Next, you will see the different tasks that can be executed when you are in the second stage. So once the customer has been created, you end up in the second stage where you can execute multiple tasks. And here you have those tasks at your availability. So that means that, as you can see, it doesn't matter which task you will start or where you are. When you are in the middle of the execution of a task, you can always execute the other task as well. So here you can select them. So this is where you see that the case management model is in action. And then in the next slide, you see the business process in action. So here I am at a certain task, the adapt prices task, where I can manually adapt the prices that have been computed by the decision tables. You see at the right that it is assigned to me. So my name in blue means that that task is assigned to me. And what you see here is the diagram view, where you can see that I'm in the fourth step of the sub-process within the case model. And that fourth step has, of course, a form which I can fill in as well. So what you see here is the tab of the diagram specifically. And then last, the decision model in action. So yeah, you won't actually see the decision model in action within the tool as an end user, because those are, of course, executed fully automatically. But there is some traceability that can be looked into, which shows you which rules have been fired. So in this case, we have a decision table and we have the input and the output columns. And at the top of the input columns, you see the actual value. So product is 3 in this case. And the customer loyalty in years is 0 because it's a new customer. And then based on that, we see that we trigger the third row, which means that we have a reduction percentage of 2.5. So this means that you can actually see which rules have been fired. And the same exists for the business processes. So this shows you how many tasks are active at this moment within a certain business process. So I see that one of the business processes that are being executed is at the step adapt prices, and 2 of them are at the step select products. This kind of monitoring is very interesting because it shows you where bottlenecks are within your process. So this allows you to see where certain things can be optimized or where additional personnel should be put into place, things like that. Camunda doesn't provide this view for the case management model, but yeah, obviously you might understand that the same type of monitoring can be provided for case management as well. So yeah, a little wrap up of what experience has learned us, and that doesn't only concern the experience from this project, but the experience coming from a broad range of projects that we have executed in the past few years. And the first thing to keep in mind is that the direction of the extensibility of the Triple Crown goes more or less into one direction. And with that, I mean that The basis of everything is decision management. Then you have business process management, and that can be extended with case management. And the reason I say that and what we see is that when you apply business process management, for example, you almost always encounter that you have to execute some rules. And you can define those rules in your business process, but there was a reason that DMN was being defined, and that was that, yeah, it doesn't belong into your process. So when you apply business process management, you almost certainly have to apply decision management. And the same holds for case management. And that means that if you apply case management, what you have seen here as well, is that in most cases, you aren't talking about unitary tasks. You almost always are talking about business processes within your case model. So that means that if you apply case management, you almost always have to apply business process management, and with that decision management as well. Whereas we see that decision management can, in quite a lot of situations, be used singularly. The other two less. Then the usage of the correct model. Yeah, I already discussed that a little with the previous point. So as I said, you can define, for example, decision logic in your business process model, but that is not what we wanted to do. So yeah, please separate them. When you have decisions, put them in the decision model. And the same holds between case management and business process management. Some of the tools that are available on the market only specialize in case management. But the problem is that the case management models aren't really meant to define completely predefined processes. And applying case management tools for that means that you are going to complexify your models very much. So take that into account and try to use the correct model for the correct goal, that's the correct diagram that you wish to model. And then focus on business users. What we see in a lot of projects is that those models are being defined or those techniques are being applied by technicians. And the result of that is that you get technical models which the business still doesn't understand. Whereas the idea behind those models is that they are accessible. You make the logic accessible to your business users, and not only the decision logic, but also the logic of the processes and the cases that are being defined. So it is important that as a practitioner, you actually keep your focus on those business users, and that you create models that can be understood by those users. And then my last slide. So here I will shortly discuss how the challenges are then being resolved by the application of the Triple Crown. And most of them hold for decision management alone as well. But yeah, this presentation concerns the Triple Crown, so let's discuss them as a whole. So the problems first, big influence of IT, the steering of priorities, blocking complexity, and business logic as a black box. When you apply the Triple Crown, you enable the business to organize their priorities because they are put back in charge and see what is actually being developed. Then complexity becomes manageable. Models are simply much easier to read than source code. And in what you have seen is that the analysis actually becomes your implementation. Of course, there is some logic behind those steps. But for example, if you want to generate a PDF, you have to call a function that generates that PDF. But what we see in a lot of modern applications is that they come with a broad range of predefined interfaces that allow only a little configuration and enable you to actually, or enables the business to actually define what has to be done within the application. So the problems for low reaction speed were a fast evolving environment, increasing automation demand, and IT has its own challenges. And how Triple Crown resolves that is that the business can take action. What is important there is to know that not every business user will be able to define those models, especially not from a blank paper. So in most cases, you need an expert in those tools, but you need an expert that is very much on the business side and far less at the IT side. Also, once those models have been defined, you see that small changes can be created or can be executed by the business. For example, if you need to change those percentages for the products or additional products have to be added, this can be done by the business itself. Changes are less time consuming because those models are easier to read and easier accessible. It is easier to pinpoint where something has to be changed. And then this all allows IT to focus on their own challenges because the amount of time consumed by the business from them is being minimized. And then shadow IT, so what were the problems there? The increasing product offerings, the fragmented IT landscape, and no support program for the applications being developed by the business itself. So the solutions there, applying the Triple Crown has to be done in such a way that it provides a collaboration between business and IT. That means that if you are doing a product selection, for example, you have to invite IT to set their requirements as well. For example, if you are a Microsoft oriented infrastructure, then you aren't going to introduce Unix-based platforms, or they have to be provided via the cloud, for example, something like that. But you have to have an agreement with IT about the product that is going to be used. Then since you provide a product, or the IT organization provides a product, this product can be the centralized product. So that means that you have one product for low-code applications and not different products that are made available via different parts. And then IT can validate the work of the business if desired, and there is a generalized deployment strategy. So that means that, yeah, business doesn't create applications on their own that they provide to someone else. No, you have those platforms provide a centralized flow for the deployment. And that was my presentation about the Triple Crown. So yeah, thank you for joining this session. And
thank you very much, Dennis. Yes, that was lots of great comments in the Slack channel about the use of the standards. Denis Gagné was very excited about having CMMN shown at the DecisionCAMP and the idea of how we mix these things together.
Yeah.
There was a question from Jan about which industry sector that you're using this in.
Multiple. So in this case, it's a party which sells products that are created by software companies, which then are bought by other parties. We also apply this for the government. So the example I've shown last year concerned a generalized business rules platform for the entire Flemish government. And in there, we actually have combined business process management and decision management as well with each other. We also use this in the transport sector, for example. We have a large company, large client in the transport sector who is applying those techniques as well. So there are different organizations that are using these kind of techniques, the combination of these standards at the moment. Yeah.
Good, good. So we have time for one last question and then we'll need to close it off. Denis said that you started your model presentation with an encompassing case, and they find that this pattern is the best practice in contexts that are highly dynamic and evolving. And do you see that this same pattern is also useful in more predictive contexts, such as the one that you presented?
Yeah, so that was what I was saying before. what we see is that sometimes case management models are being used for more predefined processes. And what we think should be done is that you then separate that in a business process model. So if you combine those two, so put everything into your case model, you will see that your case model is going to be complex very quickly. And that is, not smart. The models become unreadable as well. It becomes very complex to follow what actually can be selected when you are in a certain stage within your case model. So really separating those two concerns, so case management and business process management, is really a good practice. And we see that that is done too little in practice.
Right. Yes. Okay. That's great. Well, thank you very much. And
You're
Jacob,
welcome.
I think you have some closing remarks for the end of DecisionCAMP before we move off to the cocktail hour.
Okay. Okay. Yes, like everything in life, this event's coming to the end. But as I wrote on Slack channel, the good news is that it's DecisionCAMP 2020 comes to the end. But our DecisionCAMP gradually becomes a running event. And we will have from now on certainly our channel, Slack channel, that served us really well. Everybody agreed on this. And we have a YouTube channel. Both these channels stay up and running. And I think we will probably have once per month Zoom sessions with people who volunteer to do it. Please send me email with requests that you want to be next presenter. And hopefully we will have the same audience again together at least once per month. And in general, this, I have to say that this is online format came as necessity. But like in all bad things, we can find something good. And people already wrote about this. It was easy for us not to travel. And it was, we found a lot of good formats. We learned something this year, and hopefully in the future it would be even better. But it still would be a question, what format we prefer. It's in our poll, I can see people already started to tell that it should be a combination of virtual and physical conference. It's natural answer because we don't know yet. I would tell you personally, while I really like this event and what we managed to do all together, I still miss personal contact. And if you look on previous events, I know that after sessions tired, we came and we had beer together and we just had some discussions and not necessarily technical. It's like in school. When people go to school, it's not necessarily they go for education. There are a lot of other reasons to talk to people, and it's frequently, I found, more valuable than technical event itself. So we will see and we will listen to you and how better to organize the event in 2021. But I can tell you before pandemic, we already started to arrange to look for candidates for 2021. And we found good support in the University of Montreal. And our intention was to run event over there. So if it was, we did not commit to this yet, but we do have a very good support in Montreal. And if we decide to have physical and virtual events, it probably would be Montreal. And it's good to get back to North America. And people who cannot travel would be able to join us online. So probably this is our future destination. And in general, my impression, it was quite a good DecisionCAMP. And I want to thank, first of all attendees. We had so many registrations, but again, if you look on how many people actually attended, we got to the same core people that we had previous years. It's about 60 people usually. And but I appreciate the support and active participation of all of you. And I want to thank, first of all, Sandy. She was certainly instrumental for success of this event and our first attempt to do it. I would ask you to give her a round of applause. If you can, look on this reaction button. Let's see. Let's do it together. Reaction on here, right? Okay, Sandy, it's for you. And I also want to thank all members of organization committee and our hosts from Declarative AI. And I think we should not stop here and we should keep going. Let's take 3-4 minutes to bring your own beverages, and we will continue. And Sandy, do you want to say a few words?
I don't know. I feel like I've been talking a lot over the last 3 days. This has been a great experience. I sort of came to this because I've attended probably 8 or 10 different virtual conferences since the lockdown started sometime in March or April. And I started to write about some of the best practices and worst practices. And Jacob saw this and invited me to give him a little bit of advice. And that went from giving him a little bit of advice to actually volunteering to run all the logistics. So in spite of my cat yowling in the background that you can see now. So she's been a little lonely the last couple of days. But really glad that I was able to participate. Last year in Bolzano, I was blogging about this. This year, I was more kind of running things behind the scenes. But glad that it worked out for everybody.
Thanks to you, we will have all recordings now. Okay, so let's take a few minutes break and we can play music and let's join for drink, Zoom drink together in 3 minutes, okay? See you soon.